Mr. President, I just saw something that sickened my stomach. The manhandling of a United States senator. We need immediate answers to what the hell went on.
And here is Florida Congressman Maxwell Frost during the House Oversight Committee hearing earlier today.
Will you commit on the record to work on subpoena Kristi Noem?
Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're out of order. Chair recognizes
Will
Ms. Green.
you commit on the record to subpoenaing Kristi Noem because a U.S. senator was just thrown to the ground and detained in his own
Democrats
container?
can't follow the rules. Can't follow the law. Can't follow the rules.
Shut up. Just shut up.
No, you don't. No, you're not going to tell me to shut up.
How do you get him in order? You're running for
not like that.
He has been out of order 6 times. He's trying to get on MSNBC. You probably knocked.
I get it.
Somebody off
I don't have any
MSNBC
problem
to
getting
get
on
on there.
MSNBC.
I think as he's been arrested as a former Antifa member, right?
Back to order, Ms. Green. Go.
He's a former Antifa
Ms.
member,
Green.
Mr. Chairman.
You got
no
it.
surprise.
Well, following that statement from Schumer, Senator Padilla held his own press conference.
I came to the press conference to hear what she had to say, to see if I could learn any new additional information. And let me emphasize, just as we've emphasized the right for people to peacefully protest and to stand up for their First Amendment rights, for our fundamental rights. I was there peacefully. At one point, I had a question. And so I began to ask a question. I was almost immediately forcibly removed from the room. I was forced to the ground, and I was handcuffed. I was not arrested. I was not detained. I will say this. If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country. We will hold this administration accountable.
Former presidential candidate, former Ohio Congressman, and former mayor of Cleveland, Dennis Kucinich, joins me. Good evening, sir. And just to go back for a little bit for Congress, it's sort of that back and forth with Chairman Comer and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Sort of reminded me of the hair pulling in some Southeast Asia parliaments when they get into fist fights.
Well, you know, it's government of the people.
Yeah, I guess.
But let's get serious about what's happened here with Senator Padilla. First of all, there are First Amendment issues. It's a public building. He is a U.S. senator. He has oversight responsibility. He has a right to ask questions. That's number one. Secondly, there's this question. It's a constitutional question: separation of powers. You know, we don't work. You know, I've been a member of Congress 16 years. We don't work for the executive branch. We work with them. And you have a right to ask questions. So, I mean, these are some of the issues out there.
Let me go one further. I'm looking at this. Look, I don't think he should be handcuffed. I get that. But looking at the press conference, my guess is it's the Secret Service who did that. I mean, Secretary Noem didn't say, arrest that guy, handcuff him, throw him up.
Absolutely.
She's going to get blamed with it. She's going to get blamed, but she didn't do it.
I agree with you. You know, ICE, FBI, there's Senator Padilla has an arguable case here for deprivation of rights under color of law, and he probably could if he wanted to. I doubt he has the time to file a civil suit on that. You also have, you know, why did ICE and the FBI escalate this? He identified himself as a U.S. senator. Look,
I don't know. But in the heat of the moment, all this, I mean, look, the two of them met afterwards, and they had a conversation. And, you know, it's like, it's one of these flaps. Look, he's got a First Amendment right. He's got oversight. I got all that. But he wasn't handcuffed by Secretary Noem. It was the Secret Service, and they probably suspected there was some harm or some danger. And you know, in this, I don't know.
Well, whatever they thought, he identified himself as U.S. senator. At that point,
do you believe him though? At that point, if you think there's a danger, I don't know if you do.
There's no danger. There is
no. But if they, I mean, just not to beat a dead horse, but if they thought he was lying, if they didn't recognize him for whatever reason,
But once he identifies himself as U.S. Senator, everything
and shows
stops.
identification.
Right.
Okay. Well, yeah, if he showed identification, but saying I'm a U.S. Senator wouldn't be enough.
My concern, and the bigger question here, is the normalization of executive employees overreaching. They need to be trained.
The Secret Service, you mean?
Secret Service,
or FBI, whoever's
ICE,
protecting
FBI, who's ever on site there under whatever agency they're working for, they have to understand that a member of Congress has the right to exercise oversight responsibilities in a federal building.
I don't want to disagree with you, but the one thing I know is that I walk through Congress, and there are 400 some members of Congress. I don't recognize all of them. I'm not sure. And if I thought something was dangerous, I might first protect if I were Secret Service and then ask. Because if you ask first, it turned out you're wrong, you got a problem.
I can accept that.
Okay.
At the same time, once somebody identifies themselves, and he's a U.S. Senator, people in the room knew who he was.
Well, if they knew, I agree.
He represents 40 million people in California. And if I'm in the Senate watching what happens, I'm going, whoa. As Senator Padilla said, you do this to a U.S. Senator, what are you going to do to people behind closed doors?
You know what the irony of it is that he wanted to get his point across. If there hadn't been this flap, his point would not have had the volume that it has now. Do you know what I mean? Now everyone has heard it. It's like,
okay,
I'm not sure he wants to be handcuffed and thrown down, but now people have heard from him that might not otherwise have heard.
Well, I will tell you this. Having served in Congress, I was very alarmed to see the way that he was treated. And once he identified himself as a U.S. Senator, I think that that's when things should have cooled off right away. I don't think that Secretary Noem, as you said, had anything to do with ordering this, but she gets caught up in it. Look, the executive branch and the legislative branch, co-equal branch of government, they have to work together. And when there's this one group attacking one another, using force and restraining people who happen to, make the laws. I have a problem with that.
I don't like the force either. But anyway, we survived this storm, I think. Congressman Dennis Kucinich, thank you, sir.
Good to see you, Greta.